Welcome back to Gatecrashers. This week, I'm joined by Gregg Katzman, the marketing and publicity manager of Valiant.
Hey, how's it going?
It's great, man. I'm very excited to have you on.
Yeah, thank you so much for the invite. I really do appreciate it.
I'm very excited to have you here. I've been reading a lot more Valiant since you and I have connected, so I'm excited to chat a little bit about that. But first up, as you know, I am a hard-hitting journalist. Always going to the books. Like everybody knows, I'm the one who asks the hard-hitting questions. What's your favorite sandwich?
That is a very difficult question, and to be honest with you, it's not one that I was prepared for, and I'm not sure I could handle tough questions like these. So I think you have all the material you need right now. I think we're good. I think we could call it. I would say my favorite sandwich is a turkey sub from a place here in Jersey called Just Subs, where I'm a very simple man. I just like turkey, lettuce, and Russian dressing on both sides on whole wheat bread.
Just Subs. Okay. That's North Jersey. I know that.
Yeah, they have a few locations throughout the state.
Yeah, I've been going to, we have a chain down here called Primo's. And I probably shouldn't be going to Primo's as much as I am. Like, probably once a week, just because they have long hots, which they put on the sandwiches, which nobody around here does. So it's a big get for me. So you and I have had this discussion before, but I'd love for you to tell a little bit how you got into the marketing and PR side of comics.
Yeah, happy to. So before joining Valiant Entertainment, I was comics press for a number of years. I started my career in the entertainment industry for a website called UGO Entertainment. I was a freelance writer and then an entertainment editor over there. I will say prior to that, I was actually in the news industry for a few years. I was a writer and producer. I could have had, a solid, stable future in that industry, but I just wasn't really passionate about it. And I wanted to take everything that I learned over the years and apply it to something that, I really felt excited about and wanted to write about. So UGO was my gateway into this side because it gave me the opportunity to write about movies, TV shows, comic book characters, and video games. And through that job, I had so many amazing experiences. That's why I really had a great opportunity to do like press junkets. I got to interview, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson in person for the G.I. Joe Retaliation.
Wow.
Yeah, that was. We ended up just talking about Star Wars versus G.I. Joe because I'm sure obviously, the respective publicity people there wanted to talk about the movie, but I talked about G.I. Joe action figures. And I was like, did you play with them when you were a kid? Because I really wanted to get to know him on that level. And he said yes. And he said like he would make them fight like his other action figures. So I got into talking about like, what other action figures did he have? And we just went on this ridiculous story about how he would have like his Han Solo and Boba Fett fight like Snake Eyes and Roadblock. And it was a lot of fun. And from there, I, of course, had to ask him like, well, you're playing Roadblock, or at least I think that was the character's name. It's been a while since I've, looked at the G.I. Joe universe at all. And I asked him, I was like, yeah, and Ray Park is Snake Eyes. What about you two guys getting into a fight? And he told this hilarious story about how Snake Eyes would start winning, but then Roadblock would just kick him in the crotch and win that way. So everything you see from The Rock when it comes to his videos and stuff, seeming like such a kind and funny person. It's all true, because this was even like before and after we started the interview. He was just always sweet, never dismissive. He seems like a really great guy. But enough about The Rock. Let's talk about me. Who wants to hear about him, right? So through that job, I was lucky enough to meet other people on the comics press side of the industry, and people at IGN, CBR, a bunch of other places. And my next step was that Comic Vine, where I actually spent 2 years writing, which was totally surreal for me, because I was on their forums for, I want to say, years at that point, just always in the battle threads, having fun, talking about like, what would happen if this character fought this character. And I kind of brought that to the homepage of Comic Vine as well, which I have to, give so many thanks to Tony Guerrero and Matt Elfring for humoring all my silly pitch ideas, like stuff like, does Batman always win, or best battles of the week. So I had a lot of fun doing that. And believe it or not, this does connect to Valiant now, because around 2012 is when Valiant, the company, relaunched with the Summer of Valiant. And at the time, I was writing for Comic Vine. I was primarily focused on, like I said, fun battle stuff, mostly revolving around Marvel and DC, because at the end of the day, that's where there was the most interest. I would dip my toe outside of the Marvel and DC pool occasionally, like, IDW's Ninja Turtles. I'm just a big supporter of that run. I think it's so impressive that they recently surpassed 100 issues. Sales are still strong. They're still generating excitement. And The Last Ronin comes out. I don't know when this episode is going to air, but at the time of us recording, the issue goes on sale in 2 days. And I know that's the first comic I'm going to read on New Comic Book Day this Wednesday. But yeah, so I was doing a lot of coverage, but Valiant was something that I never really checked out. As a kid, I did play the Turok games. I did play Iron Man, Exo Manowar, Heavy Metal on the Game Gear. But I never really read the Valiant comics as a kid. It never went into my, into my field of vision or anything. I just never had that opportunity.
Is Turok
so when
still
it relaunched,
Valiant?
yes. No, Turok and a few other characters are part of something called Gold Key, which our friends over at Dynamite have the rights to those characters.
Interesting.
Yes.
Huh, I didn't do that.
Yeah. So back at Valiant, when the Summer of Valiant kicked off, as a comics press guy at the time, I said, this is very interesting to me. It's an accessible new universe that I have no experience with. I want to check out all these #1 issues, see if I like them. If so, continue. If not, it is what it is. I'll move on and I'll continue covering other things. And the first issue to come out was Exo Manowar #1. I read it and I was just hooked. So from there, it was me, Tony, and Matthew kind of, debating about who will cover which Valiant comics. I know Matt got to do the regular reviews for Exo and all those interviews. I would primarily focus on like Bloodshot and Harbinger. And then I would write so many articles about Valiant. I would sprinkle them into other articles. Like when I did Best Battles in New Comics, I would throw like a Bloodshot fight in there or something, hoping that, let's say someone reads the article to see the latest Batman fight. Then they see Bloodshot doing something cool and they say, wow, that looks pretty cool. I hope I'll check that out. So I was a big advocate of checking out Valiant back then. I continued to review them. I visited the office. I did interviews with the management, staff, and creators. So I just absolutely loved and constantly supported Valiant for many years before actually joining Valiant. And that would also occur whenever possible at my other jobs. I've also worked for CBR, Screen Rant, did some stuff for IGN. I was also the marketing and events manager over at Midtown Comics. I did that for 2 years, where was coordinating their events with creators. So that was a lot of fun, getting to set those up and just giving, comic fans the opportunity to meet so many, writers and artists that they, appreciate. So that was always fun. But then 2 years ago, Matthew Klein, our VP of Sales and Marketing, my boss, reached out to me and asked if I had any interest in a marketing gig at Valiant. And to be totally honest with you, I never really envisioned myself working at a publisher. I loved, being press, having the ability to cover, the variety of comics, shows, video games, TV shows that I adored. And, the constant creative freedom to keep doing new things and promoting a variety of things. But this sounded like a really cool opportunity. And I, of course, have a very long history of supporting Valiant all the way back to 2012. So I was happy to hear him out. But I was also very cautious because I wanted to make sure if I was taking a full-time position at a company that I love, I want to make sure that I'm the right person for the job and it's a good fit. Because as much as I love a place, I want to make sure I can actually bring something to that company and help them instead of, just being able to brag that I work there and kind of, not really helping matters and not being the best person for the opportunity. And thankfully, everything about the job related to all my experiences. As I'm sure a big part of my job is working with press. That's what I really love doing, and I say this as humbly as possible. It's something where I think I do it pretty well because I know what it's like on the other side. What I bring to Valiant is the perspective of not only a fan who fell in love with the company in 2012, but also an enthusiastic journalist who felt inspired to write about the company and create content about the company because I wanted to. So that's a big part of the job, and it's something that I really love doing. Just working with press, getting to know press. Why do they like Valiant? What do they love about Valiant? What actually resonates for them? What is a good fit for their site? Because obviously, well, some outlets, if you ask them, hey, do you want to talk to so and so? For some outlets, that could be a really cool and exciting opportunity. For other outlets, maybe if they love doing interviews, it doesn't matter because at the end of the day, they found that their readers or viewers or listeners, it's not something that really appeals to them. So for me, it's a lot of fun getting to know people, getting to know what they like and what's mutually beneficial. Because obviously my objective is always to promote Valiant, but I never want to do so in a way that's not organic, if that makes sense. I want to make sure that if someone's writing about Valiant or talking about Valiant, it's because it's something that's a good fit for their outlet, and it's something that I do hope that they actually want to cover, and it's an opportunity that they enjoy.
From my end, you and I have done many emails to the point that all of my bosses know if we get a Valiant email, they just send it to me first. So your passion for Valiant and the things you do speaks volumes in every communication we have, which is why I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you.
So I have other questions. This one's off the cuff. How did you adapt to becoming a marketing and PR person from the journalist side? Like, what tools do you think you gained through writing and interviewing literally everywhere?
That's a really great question. Because I do think at the end of the day, there are a lot of people who love being on the press side, and that's what they want to do. They know that they're going to stay there. But there are some people who also, do it because they love the medium and they want to find a way to, take that leap to become like a writer or an artist or in marketing or some other area of the industry. So for me, I found that what benefited me the most, first and foremost, the perspective that I bring to the company is one of an authentic fan So I'm thankfully, in an environment where they encourage my honest feedback because they know that I represent a certain type of fan. And at the end of the day, I'm one of those what some people would call a Wednesday warrior. Someone who's going to a comic shop every week, picking up a lot of the superhero titles. I'm a certain kind of fan, but also the press perspective helps a lot with marketing because with that experience on the press side of the industry, what really works with your audiences. What kind of content interests them. So that way, when it comes to promoting something you're interested in, you perhaps have more ways to accomplish reaching that audience that someone else may be, because not that they're not capable of, accomplishing that, but you just have the pre-existing experience to know that, for Valiant, look, for example, I know where we stand in the industry. I'm very passionate about what we do, and I always want us to, try to hit a home run every time, whether it's our announcements, our collaborations, our books, all that stuff. But I also recognize where we stand in the industry. So you have to take that perspective with you when you are then pitching to, press. For example, you work with CBR. I obviously won't give any behind the scenes stuff here, but I do know that, when it comes to CBR, doing, an interview and some kind of exclusive is obviously more appealing than if I were to just say hey, we have this book coming out next week. Do you guys want to run 5 pages exclusively? I mean, you guys may go for that, but obviously it's not as exciting if you don't have something with the creator in there, maybe some quotes or something like that. Mm. And so you're taking knowledge of a very important part of this industry. For example, while I have knowledge of how to work with press and how to work with fans, because, I am both of those things, or at least I was press. When it comes to the retailer side, that's an area where I'm, sometimes I can be a little oblivious because I don't have that experience. Even though I worked with Midtown Comics, I wasn't on the ordering side. I mostly worked with creators and fans to promote the company. I wasn't behind the scenes when it comes to orders and kind of, deals you can make with publishers for, number ones and working with variants and stuff like that. So there are various parts of the industry where everyone has a different area of expertise. And we have a great sales team at Valiant, and all of them are former retailers. For example, Danny, she is a huge lifelong comic book fan, and she has a lot of experience working in shops. My boss, Matthew Klein, worked at Forbidden Planet for a while. And I know the other guy in sales, John, he also has experience not only at, I believe, Forbidden Planet, but also I think he may have worked at Barnes & Noble. So they bring perspective on a very important part of the industry, sales, where I don't have those strengths. But when it comes to everything, all the years that I spent as press and finding ways to promote something to readers, I feel like that's kind of invaluable, because that's something I learned all the way back when I was with Comic Vine in 2012. I loved Valiant. I would write about Valiant specifically, but I quickly learned that I was only reaching the same people every time with those articles. And to try to actually effectively encourage new people to read Valiant, you obviously have to discover new ways to appeal to other people, because everything you've been doing hasn't worked. So I would try to find organic ways to get Valiant on the radar of someone who was picking up Wolverine every week or Batman every week by doing these different kinds of editorials and articles where Valiant would be sprinkled in when highlighting multiple things. So that way you are putting Valiant in front of people who may have never had any interest in Valiant before, and that could potentially change matters for them.
That's such an interesting perspective, especially that the company and the sales department is run that way. It's sort of like for fans, by fans, like people who are actually into the thing are the ones doing it. because you could bring in whatever marketing firms you want, but at the end of the day, it's not in their blood, if you will.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I think that at the end of the day, you need to know, what your audience wants, and then how can you go beyond and reach a parallel audience as well, while still appealing to your audience. And if you have a disconnect there, if you're not providing product that your audience wants and you're not providing product that's winning over new people, obviously there's a disconnect and there's a problem there that needs to be evaluated. So I do think that one big advantage of Valiant is that, I'm a big Valiant fan, and I'm lucky enough to work with people who are open to my honest feedback. Like we've had a ton of very open and honest conversations about, stuff that we're doing, stuff that's planned. And I love that, there's no ego there. It's all about what's best for Valiant,
That's very good to hear. Yeah, that's all very exciting. And I've spoken with Danny a few times. I love her. She's great.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get a little bit more into Valiant. And as you mentioned, the summer of Valiant, I remember, I think it was New York City Comic Con that year. There was like all of these like banners for these characters that I had never seen before. I was in college when Valiant came back, I want to say, probably. And I just remember seeing these like really like the Exo Manowar stuff. I was like, whoa, who is that? And eventually I started learning more about them and things like that, because for a while, was there a company for a while, or did it come back?
So Valiant was originally around about 30 years ago, and they were acquired by a video game company, Acclaim, and that's what generated like Turok, I believe also the Shadow Man game and Armorines. And then the company did go away for a while, but behind the scenes, people were working to bring it back as Valiant Entertainment. So the company did, start publishing again in 2012. But it's one thing that I find absolutely incredible about that is that even when comics weren't being published, fans were still talking about Valiant, and that's just incredible. I mean, I've had the opportunity to, as a former press guy and former just comic reader with no, affiliation whatsoever to anything. Obviously, you get to know every kind of fan base, and I just find it incredible how dedicated the Valiant fans are. And then they've stayed that way. It's really impressive.
Yeah, the people who are fans are like very big fans. Mm-hmm. So with that, what do you think is the draw of the Valiant universe over the other two big Cape shared universes?
Sure. So I will say first and foremost, I am a big fan of Marvel and DC. I'm not trying to be politically correct or anything, but I am I'm a lifelong Marvel and DC fan, so I'm never going to, knock what those guys are doing or anything. I love them, and I continue to happily buy their comics every week. But one thing that I think helps make the Valiant universe unique, and I guess it's technically two things. The first thing is it feels more like an accessible shared universe than Marvel and DC do, because those companies obviously have such a rich history behind them. There are decades and decades worth of building these characters with iconic runs, universe-changing events, various incarnations of teams, so on and so on. So when it comes to being a new reader, if you really want to take a deep dive, it can be a little challenging, and you need to do a little more research if you don't just want to, go in blind and hop in anywhere. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but that's, something that comes with these two companies that have been around for so long and have such an impressive resume of comic runs. Whereas with Valiant, there was the original incarnation, there was the break, and then the Valiant Universe did a total reboot in 2012. So our universe right now is less than 10 years old. And the way it's always been handled is that every single title, no matter where it takes place in the Valiant universe, should always feel accessible while also serving as a gateway that opens a reader to everything else that's going on in the universe. Like you should be able to read Exo-Manowar and, discover there's a whole whole other universe out there, and then, pick up Ninjak or make some other organic kind of transition. You can check out Punk Mambo, which I know you're a big fan of, and go and read Shadow Man to explore more of the supernatural side of the universe. So I think first and foremost, it's an accessible shared universe. But it's also, while it is technically a superhero universe, they don't really feel like traditional superheroes. It feels a little more grounded in its tone. Even if there's an alien invasion or time traveling, it feels like repercussions exist within our universe. And we always say dead is dead in the Valiant universe. So when it comes to the storytelling and the handling of characters, they should be a little more complex, the characters. And the stories should definitely matter and carry on to, everything else that will happen.
So with the dead is dead rule, no one gets to come back?
Well, I'm sure with the power of creative storytelling and, for example, Eternal Warrior, he dies all the time. But that's part of his son. That's part of his story. Yeah. He's not very good at his job. His job is to protect the Geomancer. He dies, comes back. Speaking of which, if you've never heard of the Eternal Warrior, or if you are looking for an Eternal Warrior reading recommendation, I strongly recommend not only Incursion, which dropped recently from Alex Packnadell and Doug Braithwaite, but he also plays a prominent role in the Valiant, which I think is a great gateway into the Valiant universe, and also Wrath of the Eternal Warrior, which I think is an absolutely superb story.
Yeah, I actually just edited a piece on the Valiant. Awesome. Yeah. So I never knew it happened, but now I'm fully aware. So with those suggestions, what do you think are a couple of, with the new quote unquote Valiant universe, what do you think are a couple gateways for people? Like if you had to hand someone 3 trades from Valiant to get into the universe, what are you handing them?
That's an amazing and also incredibly difficult question. Because a lot of it boils down to the person you're handing the comics to. For example, if I was handing it to a clone of myself, I know what I would give to me because I know what appeals to me. But there are other people who maybe the top choice could be Punk Mambo, or the top choice could be Faith or Livewire. We have a good diversity of genre at Valiant because obviously I'm a big action street level sci-fi superhero guy. So people like Exo-Manowar and Ninjak, I adore them, and I will always, love their runs. But I think if you're looking for sci-fi, Exo-Manowar should be your go-to character. If you're looking for supernatural, I do think the Punk Mambo run, the latest one, is good. There's also Dr. Mirage, as well as Shadow Man, who's had 2 runs, and he has a new run coming out early 2021. I'm not sure. When do you plan on posting this episode?
You tell me when I post it. I could be mid to late November. Let me write down what time period we're in. Around 34 minutes. Sorry, I just need to write this down so I don't forget.
No, that's okay.
I can post it whenever you want.
Okay, then I'll take a beat just so it's easier for editing.
Yeah, so I'll tell you when to go. Just watch the numbers. You're good.
So if you're into more of the supernatural or horror side of things, Punk Mambo is obviously a great example. And there's also the upcoming Shadow Man run, which is arriving in April 2021. That's one that I think needs to be on everyone's radar. It's by Cullen Bunn, John Davis Hunt, Jordi Belair, and Clayton Cowles. If you do want to learn more about that book, there are a lot of previews and interviews out there, and I'm sure you'll see some on CBR.
I was the one who did it too. I'm like, wait, Haven't I read this issue already? It was very good, especially coming from someone who has never read Shadow Man.
That's awesome.
It was like a really good, like, oh, this is who the character is, and this stuff is actually like very spooky.
I'm so happy to hear that. That's amazing.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, it was. I can't say too much because it's not out yet, but yeah, I mean, I have some questions about that later, but
okay.
Yeah, I really did love Shadow Man, and that is where I reached out to you afterwards, like, hey, this Punk Mambo character, and then I read. I usually try not to like rush through things just because it's hard for me to remember things. But Punk Mambo, I just zipped through in like half an hour. It was like what I needed to get super in.
That's incredible. Yeah, and it's only a 4-issue limited series as well, so it is definitely an easily digestible read. And I feel like Colin Bunn and Adam Gorham are such a good creative team that they work so well together. It definitely makes it flow.
Yeah, Adam Gorham is awesome. I love his style.
Yeah, I've some of the commissions he's posted are really cool, and I'm happy to see he's been sharing some process work of his Ninja Turtle stuff.
Yeah, where is he drawing the turtles?
He must be working on some of the upcoming issues with IDW, or maybe there's another like limited series with Ninja Turtles that they're working on, but it's definitely being published by IDW.
Yeah, and this will be out way after Last Ronin comes out. It's awesome. Last Ronin, it was like one of those like I wanted to like get up and do like high kicks.
I'm jealous that you guys read it. That's going to be the first thing I read on Wednesday. I'm incredibly. And you also interviewed Kevin Eastman, right?
Yeah, I was a nervous wreck before that one because like I didn't get into the comics until Campbell's run recently with 101.
Okay. Yeah, Sophie Campbell. Did you her artwork in the Northampton story arc? I'm not sure if you read that. It's a beautiful book, especially after the story arc that came before it, City Fall.
I think I'm going to go back and read all of Turtles just because I love what I'm reading.
That's great. Yeah.
But but I've had the Ninja Turtle toys since I was very, very young, like too young to remember. And I actually got hired by CBR on a Turtles pitch. So,
what was it?
It was about the issue 101 being the best jumping on point for new readers.
That's great.
And how emotional I was reading it because it's about like their family and brotherhood and all that stuff. It was,
mm-hmm.
But with Valiant, you guys are starting to branch off into movies and bringing back the games and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think we'll be seeing some synergy between that and the comics? Like one maybe emulating the other a bit, or both are inspired by totally different like mediums?
So what I can say without losing my job is that when it comes to Bloodshot, for example, we had, regular phone calls with Sony just to make sure we're always in the loop when it comes to, when's a new trailer dropping, what can we do to help promote, and vice versa. So that was a really fun experience. And, obviously we also advertised Bloodshot as a banner on the covers of our comics when the time was right. And now for the upcoming arc in Bloodshot called One Last Shot, which starts in January, Wiggins and KT, two characters who made their debut in the movies, comic versions of them are making their they technically already made a debut in the Free Comic Book Day issue, but that was super quick. This story arc will be like the first full appearances of both characters where you consistently see them and they play a role in the story.
I almost did that. Well, actually, because they were in the because we did a Tim interview where we talked about that specifically, and you let me get away with asking what's messier, Bloodshot or Money Shots. So, still very thankful for that.
I do not, as someone who brings the perspective of someone who was with press, unless it's blatantly offending the creator or just saying something blatantly rude, I am not going to ever make any requests to have questions removed. Especially because, especially because that's such a good fit for Tim, and I think he had fun with that question. Because it's another opportunity for him to promote his other book as well, and it is a legitimately funny question.
Yeah. That was all Jake act. My brother, it's another one of we interviewed Tim before that, but like for some reason, these people that I really like, I get nervous writing the questions. So I was like, hey, you got any ideas? And he was like, bam, within 30 seconds. And I was like, I'm not asking that. And he goes, you won't. And I went, all right, now I'm doing it.
I think it worked out well. I mean, it made it into the CBR article, if I remember correctly.
It did.
Yeah, I think it was like the final question, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I made sure that was the
it was buried.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like, I'm not going to say that, like, you know, the direction of the comics and the characters has to reflect what's going on in the movies. You know, like Bloodshot's not bald, for example. You know, that it's possible for different incarnations of characters to exist. For example, you know, how many different incarnations are there of Batman or Spider-Man? And they're having fun with that right now in each cinematic universe with their multiverse stories. So I think, you know, people are smart enough to know that just because you see, you know, Vin Diesel as Bloodshot, different Bloodshot in the comics, you can identify that, like, this is the comic version, this is the movie version. They're each their own incarnation, and they each, you know, thrive for different reasons. But here's all the overlap, and here are the things in common. But, you know, obviously you want to make sure that your publishing plan is complementing any opportunity where Valiant characters are appearing outside of the comics. Because if you, say, have a Valiant game on a console or a Harbinger movie, that of course gives you a great opportunity to reach so many new people and hopefully provide them with something that will make them interested in this universe and these characters and make them feel motivated to then explore other books within the Valiant universe. And as I'm sure you know, Harbinger is currently in development over at Paramount. I obviously can't speak any more to that, but, you know, that's something that obviously we have to think about, because if Harbinger is going to be on the big screen, that's huge for Valiant. And we have to do everything in our power to really capitalize on that and complement that, to make sure that if there is a Harbinger movie in theaters, and I do sincerely hope everyone can safely return to movie theaters at that point.
I hope so.
I miss going to movies, man. That's one of my happiest one of my happy places, going to a movie, sitting in the dark, and just having that shared experience with everyone around you, where you just escape reality and you're all just enjoying the same story. I adore that, and I miss it. But, you know, as someone with asthma and a pregnant wife, I don't miss it enough to risk going right now. I'll have to wait, unfortunately.
You can rent your own theater for $99 right now through AMC. Just a heads up.
I did see that. And I am happy that, you know, I obviously want theaters to, you know, survive. And I do hope they're able to keep adapting. But yeah, whenever Valiant characters are going to appear in movies, TV shows, streaming, video games, collectibles, you want to make sure that there is easily accessible you know, trade paperbacks or new comics for people to then pick up and have that experience of falling in love with the character on the big screen, and then easily figuring out how to, you know, experience that in the comic world.
Yeah. And you touched on this a little bit about the whole COVID thing. How do you feel about the shifts in the industry since all that started?
I mean, it was of course, you know, an absolutely terrible thing that's happened with COVID. You know, so many people have suffered and lost loved ones, and, you know, with how easy it is for this terrible thing to spread between people, it's of course affected so many different industries. And first and foremost, I do want to say that I know it sounds like cheesy or whatever, but I'm being totally serious here. Not a day goes by where I don't say to my wife at some point in the day how lucky I am to have a job right now. And not only that, but have a job that I love, because I know so many people who have been affected by this and weren't as fortunate. And, that really hurts to think about. But as for the comics industry as a whole, obviously you have to adapt. This is going to create a variety of new challenges, and you have to be flexible and find ways to keep moving forward. And I do think that the industry as a whole has been able to do that, but you also have to, I know for a lot of people, the answer may be just go purely digital. And I get that. Comics need to be accessible, and everyone's always on their phone. So it makes sense just to get a comic in front of them on their phone. That's one way. But you can't rely on just that, because then what does that do to the retailers? What does that do to all the local comic shops out there, all the small businesses that rely on having people excited about new comics? And of course, they had to do a lot to adapt as well. They had to, figure out, can they operate safely, not only for their customers, but also for themselves. Some of them would do curbside, some of them would do delivery. I think if I remember correctly, Anyone Comics in Brooklyn, I'm calling them out specifically because I used to work with Demetrius back in Midtown. I think I remember seeing a social post where he would do bike deliveries of new comics to people in Brooklyn. So they had to find ways to adapt, just like the publishers did, just like every other part of the industry did. And it was very difficult, but I do think that I don't know when life is going to go back to normal, or at least as close to normal as we can hope for. But I do think that the industry has done a lot of adapting, and it's given people time to think about the best way to plan for 2021 and try to provide product that gets people really excited and makes them feel inspired and encouraged to go to their local comic shop if they can do so safely, of course. And I do hope they can.
That biking thing is so impressive to me. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of stuff I love hearing, just because that's the people who love what they do, and they want to make sure they can still do it. So that's they adapted quickly, because, and biking around New York City can't be easy. Walking around New York City isn't easy. So
yeah.
Wow. That's really impressive. So take the tone to a brighter area.
Please do.
If you could do any other position in comics, what do you want it to be? So would you want to be an editor, a writer, an artist? Even if you don't have those skills, let's say you could just gain them.
That's wow. So I can instantly gain the skill required to be able to do that. Oh man, that's so tough. At the end of the day, I hope this doesn't come off as fake or anything, but I'm thinking about what I've been doing before this. Obviously I would, as a fan, I always think about, here's what I would want to do with these characters, here's what I think would be a cool story with X, Y, and Z. And it'd be so cool to do this and that. I think everyone who loves comics has that within them. And deep down on some level, wants to have the opportunity to maybe not write the actual script, but have some kind of say in what's going on with story. But I think that if I even look at my own career before this, it's always been promoting comics, promoting the things that I love, and trying to share my love for something with someone else and motivate them to check out this cool thing. I've always been a big fan of trying to support what you love and trying to stare in instead of trying to tear down what you hate. And I've tried to do that a lot with, all my writing. So I do think that publicity, being able to promote things sincerely, I think it feels like a non-answer, right? Because I'm saying I already have my dream job, but it does feel that way though.
Yeah. So it's so funny to hear, not funny to hear you say that kind of stuff, because that's literally why we started this show. Our entire mission is to get more comics into people's hands and connect someone with something that they love.
That's great.
That's all we want to do. So hearing that, and then earlier you mentioned how hard it is to get into DC and Marvel. That was literally the premises of Super Sons before we rebooted and everything.
Mm-hmm.
All we wanted to do was just help people get into something that the barrier to entry is pretty high sometimes. Like Donna Troy, good luck. Like I could go on a 4-hour podcast about that, but just hearing people who are passionate about finding other people find passion is so like invigorating for me. So with that high, what's a project you're really pumped about that Valiant has coming?
Oh, that's a good question. So what I can say is in 2021, we're going to have the return of Savage. And if you didn't read the first Savage back when it released, don't worry about it, because this is every single #1 issue has to feel like a jumping on point. Obviously, you have to not only provide something that the pre-existing fans love, but also make it feel accessible and welcome a new reader to that character and their world, and show them what makes these characters special, unique. So we have Savage, Ninjak, the Harbinger, Shadow Man, and more coming out. I really shouldn't play favorites, but I do have to say that I think it goes to Shadow Man right now. I think Cullen Bunn, he's really in his element with horror stories. So I do think giving him Shadow Man's world is it's a perfect fit. And I'm really liking what I'm seeing from John Davis Hunt, his artwork. I was actually looking at the inks of issue 3 the other day, and I'm not.
It must be nice.
I can't get ahead of myself. I want to say stuff, but I can't. All I can say is I really like what they're doing with the book, because they get to focus on it being a horror and supernatural book, which also, of course, has superhero elements to it, but it is first and foremost like a horror and supernatural thing. But they're building something bigger, while each issue is kind of a standalone story. So you're getting these little horror/supernatural story arcs in every issue, but while there is an overarching bigger picture. So I think Shadow Man would be my answer.
Oh, yeah, I probably have to agree. I love that side of the universe. Clearly, I will tweet about Punk Mambo probably once a week, and wondering when you will let her come back to me. No big deal.
I can't say anything. I'm sorry.
There's no bad blood in the water. It's fine. I'm fine. I'm over it. It's okay. But I do want to close out with another big one. If you had a Rube Goldberg machine, what would its purpose be?
I think it would be to check my email. I don't know how many times I check my email a day, but I can guarantee you it is an unhealthy amount. So if I had a bit of buffer to actually, focus on productive things instead of refreshing all the time, it would be nice to say, I want to check my email, but before doing so, I have a good 2 minutes. So how can I use that time productively instead of checking my email 5 times in that course of, 30 seconds or however long this device is? So I do think that would help me check my email a more moderate amount throughout the day, while also being a very entertaining work-related thing.
That's a very helpful answer. So, thank you for coming on. Where can people find you?
Sure. I guess I'll go ahead and plug Valiant. They can find Valiant at Valiant Comics on Twitter. It's also Valiant Comics on Facebook. On Instagram, we're Valiant Entertainment. You can also check out the website at valiantentertainment.com. You can see the calendar of new releases. If you scroll down the homepage, you'll also see that you could sign up for a weekly newsletter, and that's a recap of all the various stories that came out throughout the week about Valiant and all the latest news that is releasing. As for me personally, if you want to, you can find me on Twitter. It's just my name, Gregg Katzman.
Greg, thank you for coming on the show.